Imagine you hired a contractor to renovate your kitchen. They give you a quote, 1.3 million euros. You shake hands. You sign the papers. You trust the process. Then, somewhere between the first broken wall and the final invoice, the number quietly becomes 6 billion. Not 6 million, past 6 gillion. And you only find out now, as the contractor is packing up their tools and heading for the door with a smile. That is not a nightmare. That is the 2026 Milan-Cortina Winter Olympics. And every single number I just told you is real. Welcome to the resource equation. Today we are performing a full economic autopsy on one of the most expensive sporting events in modern Italian history. An event sold to the public as lean, responsible, and sustainable. An event that quietly became a masterclass in everything that goes wrong when politics, money, and sporting prestige collide in the same room at the same time. Buried inside this story is a lesson that goes way beyond the Olympics. It is about a specific psychological trap that causes intelligent, rational people to make catastrophically irrational decisions. A trap so powerful it has a name in academic literature. And it has been destroying public finances for decades. Before we go further, hold this question in your mind. When a city wins the right to host the Olympic Games, did they win because they made the best plan? Or because they made the most optimistic promises? We will come back to it. It is 2019. Italy is pitching to the International Olympic Committee in Lausanne. The message is clean and smart. We already have venues from Turin 2006. We are going lean, we are going green, and we will show the world how to host responsibly. Total bill for operations and venues? Approximately 1.36 billion euros. Italy wins the bid. Italian politicians celebrate. And the public is told, this time, things will be different. Here is what you need to understand about that moment. When a city bids for the Olympics, it is entering an auction. And in any auction, there is a well-documented phenomenon called the winner's curse. Think of it this way. Imagine 20 people bidding on a sealed jar of coins. Nobody knows exactly how many coins are inside. The winner is almost always the person who made the most optimistic guess. They win the jar. They celebrate. Then they open it and discover they massively overpaid. Olympic bidding works exactly the same way. The city that wins is almost always the city that made the most optimistic promises and the most conservative cost estimates. Milan and Cortina won the auction. The question was always, how many coins were actually in that jar? By late 2025, a civic monitoring network called Open Olympics published a line-by-line breakdown. The infrastructure company Simico had 98 projects, with a combined price tag of 3.54 billion euros, already more than double the original bid. But here is the detail that almost nobody reported clearly. Of that entire budget, only 13% went to projects essential to actually staging the games. The remaining 87% funded roads, tunnels, and rail upgrades. For every €1 spent on Olympic venues, €6.60 went to general infrastructure, 1 to 6.6. Add in private venue subsidies and regional projects, and Italy's own sports minister cited figures totaling €5.4 billion. Independent watchdogs and the Italian Court of Audit went further, placing the full picture at between 5.5 and 6 billion. Think about it this way. If you told your partner you needed €1,000 to buy a new television and the final bill was €4,500, you would demand answers. Italy went from 1.3 billion to 6 billion. That is not inflation. That is not bad luck. That is a structural failure of the process that produced the original promise. If you want to understand the entire Milan-Cortina story in one single venue, look at the Cortina bobsleigh track. Original estimate in the bid, €47 million. Then technical requirements changed. Then inflation hit. The number became 130 million. a near threefold overrun before a single athlete had competed. The procurement story is even more astonishing. Simico launched a public tender. Nobody showed up. 0 companies submitted a bid. A second procedure was launched. 1 company responded, Impresa Pizzarati. Their discount on an €81 million contract was less than €10,000, 0.01%. They essentially said, full price, thank you very much. Now here is the moment that will make you question everything. In October 2023, Italy actually did the right thing. The government told the IOC, we are scrapping the Cortina track. We will use existing venues in Austria or Switzerland. The IOC loved it. It would have saved over €100 million plus decades of operating costs. Then Italian politics happened. Regional politicians declared it unacceptable for an Italian Olympics to hold bobsleigh races outside Italian soil, a sport practiced by roughly a few dozen Italian athletes. Not a few thousand, a few dozen. The government reversed course entirely and ordered emergency construction with less than 2 years to go. Economists call this the sunk cost fallacy. It is like staying in a terrible movie specifically because you already paid €12 for the ticket. The money is gone, it will never return, but something in the human brain refuses to walk away. Instead, it doubles down. Italy spent €130 million to avoid the psychological discomfort of admitting a mistake. The aftermath? Projected operating deficits for at least 5 years. Energy costs of up to €1.5 million annually. And Italy has already lived through this exact story. The Cesana-Periol track, built for Turin 2006, bled losses for 6 years and simply closed. Its decommissioning bill is still unresolved, nearly 20 years later. The Italian Court of Audit used a phrase that should haunt every Italian taxpayer. Cathedrali nel deserto. Cathedrals in the desert. Beautiful, expensive, and yours to maintain forever. Here is the uncomfortable truth. This is not a new story. Not even slightly. Athens 2004. Greece spent between 9 and 11 billion euros, roughly double the estimates. The deficit surpassed 6% of GDP. Public debt crossed 110%. A few years later, that same fiscal fragility became a central ingredient of the sovereign debt crisis that nearly broke the Eurozone. Olympic spending did not single-handedly cause the Greek collapse, but it poured a very large can of fuel onto a fire already burning. Sochi, 2014. Total cost, approximately $55 billion. The bid had said $12 billion, a more than 4-fold overrun. The most expensive Winter Olympics in history, by a catastrophic margin. State banks were left carrying billions in non-performing Olympic loans for years. But here is the story almost nobody tells, and it is the most important one. Denver, 1976. Denver won the Winter Games in 1970. Then in 1972, Colorado voters held a referendum, and they said no. A legislator named Dick Lamb argued that taxpayers would carry the costs, while developers collected the profits. Initial estimates had already grown from $14 million to $77 million in under 2 years. The voters listened. Denver returned the games. What catastrophe followed? None. Meanwhile, Montreal hosted the Summer Games that same year and finished paying its Olympic debt in 2006. 30 years to pay off 2 weeks of sport. Academic research covering the last 50 years shows that every single Olympic Games has experienced significant cost overruns. The average real terms blowout is between 150 and 170% above original estimates. The IOC's selection process, which historically rewarded the most spectacular bids, was effectively a machine for selecting the cities most likely to undercount their true costs. Now let me tell you the details that did not make the official press releases. The athletes' village in Cortina. To save money, authorities rented 377 mobile homes arranged on a damp valley floor, housing approximately 1,400 athletes and staff. Journalists described it as a high-density trailer park with spectacular mountain views. Norway assessed the situation and booked hotels instead. The village was promised as a fully temporary installation, zero environmental footprint, rapid dismantling after the games. Then the agreements were quietly extended for at least one additional year. Nothing is more permanent than something that was supposed to be temporary. Then there is the gondola built on a landslide. The Apollonio Socrepe's cable car was partially constructed on terrain that official Italian government maps classify as Category P3, the highest hazard level for landslide risk. Environmental groups raised this before construction. Independent geotechnical experts raised this before construction. Authorities proceeded under emergency powers regardless. In 2025, a crack more than 40 meters long opened on the slope above the arrival station. A retaining wall deformed by 50 centimeters. Legal injunctions followed. There is a historical curiosity that reframes all of this perfectly. The phrase white elephant, used to describe a costly, useless asset its owner cannot profitably maintain or discard, comes from the royal courts of ancient Siam, present-day Thailand. Kings would occasionally gift a rare sacred white elephant to a nobleman they secretly wished to ruin. The animal was too holy to use for work, too expensive to feed and house, and the recipient could never refuse the royal gift. It slowly and quietly bankrupted whoever received it. Italy may have gifted itself several white elephants in the Dolomites, with public money. So what does the autopsy tell us? Italy made the classic mistake. A low-ball bid designed to win the competition. Systematic cost escalation. Political decisions driven by prestige rather than economics. A governance structure that made scrutiny optional and emergency powers permanent. Final bill. Somewhere between 5.5 and 6 billion euros for an event promised at 1.3 billion. A more than 350% overrun. In a country carrying public debt at approximately 140% of GDP, among the highest in the entire Eurozone. The costs do not stop in 2026. Every euro spent maintaining an empty bobsleigh track in Cortina is a euro that does not go to a hospital, a school, or climate infrastructure. The sliding center's long-term business model still depends on partnership agreements that are not yet finalized. But here is the real takeaway. And this is bigger than Italy or the Olympics. The winner's curse does not only apply to Olympic bids, it applies to corporate acquisitions, to real estate bidding wars, to government infrastructure contracts. Wherever there is competition, optimism, and asymmetric information, you will find people overpaying for things they do not fully understand. The discipline to ask what something is actually worth, not just what winning it feels like, is one of the most valuable skills in economics, in investing, and in life. The Olympic flame in Cortina has gone out. The athletes have gone home. But the invoices are just warming up. Here is my final question, and I want your answer in the comments. If your city was offered the chance to host the next Olympic Games, knowing everything you now know, would you vote yes or no? And would you be honest enough to say why? If this video made you think differently about the economics behind sport, share it with one person who watches the games but never thinks about the money. Subscribe to the Resource Equation. I will see you in the next one.